Welcome to another episode of Hey Mama. My next guest this week is Jessica. So Jessica is a business owner. She is a clinical hypnotherapist, a root cause therapist, and a mindset coach. So welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thanks so much.
I think that you are going to be an amazing addition to the podcast because you are a mum yourself. You have two young boys, 3 and 5. So you're basically in the trenches, or you're coming out of the trenches.
I always think I'm coming out of the trenches, and then something pops up. And that's the thing, there's always something, right?
And they take turns, don't they? You know, like even now I've got a 12 and a 6-year-old, and I think, oh, we're just getting a little bit of a balance here, and then something happens.
Exactly. That's it.
And so you classify yourself as a healer, a change maker, and a wife. I think that's so beautiful. So let's talk about what experiences that you had that made you become a healer and a clinical hypnotherapist, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, cool. Look, so basically, I guess, like everyone, you know, we've all got something. We've all got some kind of difficult life experiences we go through, you know, some more than others. I had quite a number of, difficult life experiences, and this is why I like to educate a lot on trauma, because, you know, trauma is a word with so much misconception around it. You know, people think trauma is like all the big stuff, you know, rape, being in war, you know, things like that, serious neglect, but it's absolutely not the case. So, you know, trauma is basically what happens inside of you, you know, not what happens outside of you. So, for example, a trauma, and by the way, it can be completely unique for each person. You know, some children are more sensitive than others, and that's the way they're born. So, you know, 2 siblings can have the exact same experience, and, you know, one might form a trauma out of it, the other might not. Yeah. So getting back to, you know, an example of how simple a trauma can be for someone. You might have your parents, you know, over there like arguing, and you're witnessing them arguing, and I don't know, you're just a little wee 3 or 4-year-old, and you're standing there by yourself, or sitting and watching it and listening to it. And, you know, you're coming up with all these big emotions. It could be, you know, sadness, fear, whatever it is. But basically something's happening. You're having a reaction in your nervous system. You're having these big emotions, and you're sitting there and you're stuck there with your emotions alone. So essentially you've got the big emotion. There's no resource of safety in that moment for your nervous system to come back down and say, I'm okay. Right? Because your parents, you know, they're doing what they're doing. They're arguing. They're stuck in, you know, their moment. And they're dealing with their own stuff. But as a child, you know, you're there and you're having this emotional experience, and you've got no one to be that resource of safety. Essentially what happens is that energy stays stuck in the nervous system because it's not come to completion, because there's no resource to bring us back down to that rest and digest, essentially. And so what happens is we make limiting decisions about ourselves or the world. So, for example, in that situation as a child, you know, you might decide, you know, my parents are fighting because of me. I must be bad. I'm not lovable, things like that. So that's how easy it is to have an experience. So you have the experience, you have a big emotional reaction. And if you have no resource of safety to help you process those emotions, we make a decision about ourselves or the world, which is essentially called a limiting belief. Mm-hmm. So I had myself, and by the way, limiting beliefs are mostly created between the ages of like 2 and like 12 to 14. And most of our subconscious mind is formed between the ages of like 0 and 7. All our programming.
Before, yes.
Yeah, so it's called like the imprint period. So essentially, like I had quite a number of experiences like that which caused me to make a lot of limiting decisions about myself. And so, what happens is, if you have a few of those experiences, they get ingrained into the subconscious mind, and then you essentially live off that. So, for example, one of the beliefs that I created, which of course I had no awareness of until not too long ago, was that I'm not considered, and I'm not good enough. So this is how it plays out, okay? So later on, like in high school, if I'm not feeling good enough and I'm full of shame and things like that, I'll turn up to high school, and how do you think my behaviour is going to look? I'm going to sort of look like this. I'm going to look shameful. I'm going to look hunched over. And so I became an easy target for bullying. So, I had bullying in high school, and what happens that just deeply ingrained that belief even further. Well, look what happened. So basically beliefs, they become like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Our subconscious mind puts us in situations to prove that belief right again and again. Like, for example, in your 20s, you might go to a party, and if you don't feel good enough, same thing, you're going to be reserved. You're not going to put yourself out there. And of course, people are not going to talk to you. And then you're going to leave and you're going to be like, see, of course I'm not good enough. So, like I had bullying in high school. And then, so the first turning point for me really was I got into a toxic relationship. And of course, if you're not feeling good enough, all that kind of stuff, you're not feeling lovable, you're going to ignore all the, red flags, which I did. And, I stayed with him way too long. I stayed 5 years. However, knowing what I know now, I took the lesson from it, and, I wouldn't, not have that experience, because it's shaped who I am today. And it's, led me on the path that I'm on today. So that was turning point number one. That sort of sent me on a healing journey, because the relationship was so toxic that I ended up, my nervous system was under so much stress that I actually developed fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. And by the way, I've always been into fitness. So to start looking how I can, increase, how terrible I was feeling. This is before developing the chronic fatigue. I went and did I think it was 12-week fitness challenge.
Yeah.
Because, this guy, he literally broke down everything, like my self-esteem. So I went and did that fitness challenge. But if you combine the physical stress of that training 6-7 days a week, and then the emotional stress that my nervous system was under, that was a recipe for disaster. However, that was my wake-up call, and that was what, sort of pushed me to decide, okay, well, I can either stay in this sort of mode where, life is happening to me, this is all too hard, I can't leave, whatever, or I can jump in the driver's seat of my life and say, okay, well, I can either stay stuck, or I can get out and I can make the changes I need to make and move forward with my life, because I was, depressed, anxious, I was removed from all my friends. And then, of course, I had chronic fatigue, I couldn't work. So I was just completely isolated.
Did you say that the chronic fatigue was the snapping point, and did you connect the dots that the relationship was the cause or the trigger, or did it take you a little while?
Yep. So definitely not at the time, for sure. As I'm sure you've got listeners that have been through the same experience, any kind of abusive, toxic relationship. I think the average is about 5 times that it takes to actually leave, which was somewhat around that case for me. So it took a long time to sort of build up the courage to finally leave. But I think that it was definitely part of it, realising that, shit, I can either stay with this guy, we were even talking about kids, and, that's going to leave me, or I can get out. Fast forwarding, it wasn't until I found the subconscious work and all this stuff that I do now, that I came to the realization that, wow, okay, that actually happened for me.
So did you find the subconscious work when you were still in the relationship, or you had made the decision to leave and then you came across this?
Yeah, that's right.
What was that snapping point? That's what I like to call it, when people make decisions in their life where they're just like, you know what, I've had enough. What was the moment that you were just like, okay, this is damaging me and I want to sit in the driver's seat?
So when I found the subconscious work, or when I decided I wanted to take responsibility?
So you'd gotten, you'd broken down, you'd gotten into the, you were diagnosed with the chronic fatigue, and then you went on a bit of a healing journey. Then what did you do? And then what was the snapping point that you were like, okay, I've had enough of this relationship. This is.
No, so it was actually, I left and then I started on the healing journey. I went and did like a 8-week chronic fatigue rehabilitation program. And that's when I started to really delve into like, who the hell am I now? Because he literally just broke me down to a shell of a person. And to be honest, I didn't know who I was before. And then that just kind of damaged it even more. So I started to go on that, who am I journey. And so
what made you decide to leave before you went on that healing journey? I just think it's really important because I've actually been in a similar relationship as well, and I know the pivotal moment that I was just like, you know what, I'm actually better than this. I deserve better than this. And then there's other women out there. I've had girlfriends before, been in abusive relationships that I've had to try and help, and it does take multiple times, and you even get blocked out as a friend for even saying something, and then they have to kind of make that decision themselves. There has to be some kind of snapping point. So what was it for you?
Yeah, to be honest, there was definitely no outside. There was no friends or family, because I very much tried to hide as much as possible, because that's what we do. We protect the relationship. I think that it started to progress from just being sort of, yelling and stuff to, I think I recall a memory of him like backing me into a corner in the kitchen. And I just felt like it was going to progress to physical from there. He started developing habits like, drinking way too much alcohol. He picked up smoking, and I was just like, yeah, wow, this is just a melting pot. This is just a disaster. So I remember the. Hey.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, subconsciously somewhere, I think you were telling yourself, I deserve better than this. So even though you have that limiting belief, it's so powerful, like, because you have that limiting belief of, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve better than this, but then somehow the depths of your soul comes up and says, actually, no, Jessica, you are better than this.
Exactly. And that was coming up. Like I knew that all along, but what happens, right, is our conscious mind, where we've got all our logic and stuff, is saying, of course you deserve better, you need to get out, this is not safe, blah, 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 right? But the 90%, which drives most of our thoughts, actions, behaviours, feelings, etc., usually going to win, right? So basically, I as you've just said, like, I knew for a long time I needed to get out, but I think I was like waiting for the right like opportunity. And so I think I specifically remember he was doing a job where he would go away for 3 days a week or whatever. And so there was a time that he went away for a few days, and I just packed up everything. I was like, because I felt trapped. I felt like I could not leave while he was there. And so that was my opportunity. And I literally remember that day so vividly, like, even though he wasn't there, just the fear, like feeling like, oh my God, he could turn up any minute. And I just literally felt like I was escaping. Like, it was crazy, the amount of fear I was feeling. But it took a long time to sort of come back from that. And something that really helped me, you know, after I started to do a lot of self-development work was finding my husband, because finally he was a secure relationship where I could feel safe and start to really heal, because we do heal in safe and secure relationships. You know, relationships can either be the perfect place for disaster, or that can be the perfect place to heal.
Yeah, or it brings all up, like brings everything up, or it brings everything out to the surface and clears. So you did the 8-week chronic fatigue healing, did you say? You did it. Was that through doctors, specialists, or did you find someone
in Melbourne, we actually have a hospital that specialises in it. Like it's a outpatient clinic, and I think there was like a group of like 10 people, and you'd go every day for like 8 weeks.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Cool.
So I never had that. I developed chronic fatigue as well, but I just did all the healing on my own. I didn't even know that there was opportunities out there like that. So that's really important to get that message out too, because if mums are listening right now and they think I may have chronic fatigue, and especially as mums with that are business owners or, are working a lot as well as raising kids, we can get burnt out. So that was one part of healing that, and then the other part was absolutely finding the subconscious work and working out, okay, what's all my baggage that I need to heal, because there is definitely a link between, emotional baggage and chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, pain in the body. As I said, when that trauma is formed, it's like a loop that's not completed, and we keep this energy in our body. If we keep this stuff suppressed for a long time, eventually it manifests as things like anxiety, depression, and, mental health issues, and then eventually pain in the body. And it all manifests in different ways. So, I too am a big advocate about the connection to the mind and the body, and it all manifests in different ways. So what you experience may be different to what somebody else has experienced, but it's all to do with the mind-body connection and emotional.
And see, that's the problem that I say to most of my clients. Like, as a society, we are so cut off from our body. We literally cognize everything. We're all very much overthink,
and we're told to just squash it.
Hey?
Just told to just squash it and get on with it.
Exactly. So we're not connected to, okay, what's actually happening in our body? Because, a lot of the time things are arising for us in our body, and if we don't, be with it, notice it, allow ourselves to feel it, it will eventually come out in other negative ways. Like, you might, let's just say something will happen in the morning and you'll feel sad about it, and you're like, oh, quick, and this might be subconsciously, by the way, you might be like, oh, distract myself. Okay, I'm going to go to the fridge and have a treat, or go binge Netflix, or overwork, or whatever, right? And then later in the day, you'll be like, oh my God, why am I so anxious?
Yeah, definitely.
You haven't sat with the feelings, you haven't allowed that energy to complete.
Wow. And I mean, it took me 8 years because I was told to suppress and get on with it. And that's how you move forward in life and things. And I put my work over it and said, I'm fine, squashed it. And it took me 8 years to actually feel and heal. Like, I think that is such an amazing insight. Don't let it go too long, because it takes
feel it to heal it. That's it.
You've got to feel it to heal it, and until you do, it'll just keep manifesting in different ways.
Exactly.
It'll catch up to you. It'll get you.
Exactly. 100%. And that's the thing. Most of us have been brought up by emotionally immature parents. So parents who were taught by their parents exactly that. Don't feel it, toughen up, it'll bring shame on the family. You've got to stuff it down. And so it just gets passed on until someone courageous decides to heal the pattern. And that's what I'm all about.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think that this is the generation that is healing the generational trauma, right? And we are so awakened to this now. And now it's so powerful that we get to change it. And you've said it here in your jot form to me that we get to change it for our children.
Yeah.
We get to work on ourselves, so then we can teach them how to work with on themselves and
exactly.
It's
huge.
Generational trauma. So tell me, so you got the healing yourself. You started getting into the subconscious healing, and then what made you think? So you met your husband, and then you went on a healing journey while you were with him. And then
it sort of just continued. And then what happened was I actually fell pregnant unexpectedly with my first. I ended up having a miscarriage with that first pregnancy. But we were still kind of processing it all, and he was like, he was in shock. At first he was like, oh, no, I don't want this. But then once we had the miscarriage, it made him realize, oh, wow, actually, you know what, I do want this. And we made the decision to try again. And of course, the same for me, it was all like very overwhelming. But then we realized, okay, this is actually what we want. We fell pregnant again quite quickly. Basically, what my experience was that, I had done, all this self-development work, and this is what happens with most of my clients that come to me. They've done all the self-development work sort of on the surface level, on the conscious level. Maybe they've gone to a psychologist, a counselor, and they've talked about their problems or whatever, all on a conscious level, right? But they haven't addressed what's underneath the surface of the iceberg. So they've only looked at the top of the iceberg that's sticking out of the ocean. They haven't looked at all the stuff that's underneath. So
the root cause, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's kind of like, you read a book, you listen to all the podcasts, you get all, you download all the quotes, you put them on your phone, but it's not addressing the root cause, So that was me up until that point. Once I had my first son, that was like, I actually call it like, it felt like a slap in the face. Like it was a huge shock for me. And it's only now that I've done the work on myself that I realize why. So I find, my experience was that in pregnancy, the focus is very much on you. Everyone's doting on you. Oh, what do you need? Like very much focused on you, right? And then literally in a moment, bam, baby's out. It's, you're not the focus anymore. The baby's very much the focus. People are bringing all the gifts, and you're like, for me, I just felt like I was just this shadow, just this milk, being milked with my pump. And I just felt like I'd just gone into the shadow, and not knowing back then, because I hadn't done the subconscious work, but now knowing what I know, that wasn't fulfilling my need, my high need for significance, and to feel considered. That belief was still sitting in there. I'm not considered, right? So of course my inner child's like, hey, oh my God, someone's seen me. Like I'm nothing now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I truly believe that all that baggage that was sitting there, becoming a mum was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I dealt with anxiety and depression pretty much my whole life from when I was around, high school. And then that was just like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I had postnatal depression, anxiety, and I was in a terrible way. So he wasn't a great sleeper. So I took him to sleep school. Which, by the way, now that knowing what I know about the nervous system, I would never do again. At that point, when I decided to take him to sleep school, I was at rock bottom. Like I remember literally hiding in the toilet so my husband would just hold him longer. You know, I could not deal. I was just overwhelmed. And so I decided, I found out when I was at the sleep school that there was like a perinatal mental health ward. I actually checked myself in. So I knew I was in such a terrible way. I didn't know what to do. I needed help.
Yeah.
But what I found was it wasn't the right place for me. It actually freaked the shit out of me. The room that I was put in, like the bathroom, it had no curtains, it had no nothing. It was almost felt like a jail. And what I found out was the reason is it's all suicide proof. And when I found that out, I was just like, oh my God. They drugged everyone up on like benzos. So essentially, like, you know, even without even knowing too much about you, like literally within the first few hours of me being there, they were like literally handing out the anxieties. Like, I'd never been on them before. I was on SSRIs most of my life. And it just freaked the shit out of me. I was like, this is not the place for me. Like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to be in my own environment and get the help that I need. Yeah. And it took a little bit, but eventually I was introduced to someone, just divine timing online. I think it was on Instagram or Facebook that was training in like hypnotherapy or a form of hypnotherapy called timeline therapy. And it also included some NLP and mindset work. And when she told me about it, I was like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. Yeah. And so I did it. And that was just like an absolute game changer for me. It literally changed my life. Not only like healing my own baggage, but, you know, understanding others, understanding the world, understanding that, you know, all these experiences that had happened throughout my life that were so painful, and that I was sort of staying in victim mode too and being like, oh, because of that, you know, I'm broken, blah, blah, blah. You know, and it does, by the way, it doesn't mean that you haven't been victimized. That's not what it means. But victim mode is saying that it's like pointing the finger. It's saying, oh, because my dad was an alcoholic, you know, now I have anxiety and I'm broken and blah, blah, blah. It's just powerless.
Yeah.
So what I learned was I can actually turn my pain into power. Like how, okay, so that, you know, that terrible relationship happened, the 5-year relationship, I can either sort of focus on that, oh, you know, I wasted so much time and look at, you know, what I could have been doing and blah, 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 and focus on that. And when you focus on that, how's that going to make you feel? It's going to make you feel like shit. It's going to make you stuck. So I completely flipped the script and I was like, okay, I went through the pain. Why continue to feel the pain? Let's take the gift. I've done the pain. I've done the 5 years. Okay, what's the gift that I can find? All right. It made me realize exactly what I deserve and become bloody clear on it. And that's why, you know, I made sure I found the right person in my husband. So it gave me that clarity. It made me realize like so much about myself. You know, if I hadn't been in that relationship, I wouldn't have gone on the healing journey, and I truly believe I wouldn't have found this work. I think I would have continued to play the pattern, play those beliefs out, and, you know, maybe got into other, you know, negative relationships. So, I truly believe that things happen for us if you choose to see it that way and find the gift. And it does make you more resilient, you know, and it does make you more wise.
Absolutely. What I love is that that quote, turn my pain into power. Really got from that. And what's really powerful about you, Jessica, is that you have had the life experience and you've turned it into now, like you helped yourself, and now you have that experience to help others.
Yeah.
Whereas, you can go to psychologists that have done their university degrees and the this and the that, but have they actually done the work themselves? And have they had that experience themselves? And that's the same as with why I coach mums, is because I've had this experience through motherhood. And then, you can go to a dietitian or a fancy this and a fancy that, or you can go to someone who's been through it, lived through it, learnt through it. Now they want to teach you how.
Exactly. You can't buy that experience. And that's what so many of my clients say. And this was also my own experience. Like, as I said, I struggled with my mental health most of my life. And, I'd seen psychologists and counsellors. And what my own experience is, and what many of my clients' experience is that they go to, a talk therapist, and they kind of feel like they're a bit on a pedestal, and they feel, they've probably already got a fear of judgment, and they feel even more judged.
Yes.
So in healing, safety is number one, because as I said, everything starts with the nervous system. So if you don't feel safe, how can you open up? So that's what the experience is for so many. They didn't feel safe to be vulnerable. And also when you're talking about the problem, not only are you staying stuck in the problem, but you're quite often reliving the trauma and re-triggering that trauma, because you're talking about it, but you're not healing it, and you're not
moving forward.
Exactly.
Healing it, moving forward, growing from it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's when people stay powerless, and they're also relying on that person. That's why so many people will keep seeing them for 2-3 years.
Yeah. A vulnerability creates vulnerability. And so when you're willing to share your story and you're a real person, and you can open up about your experiences, then that makes someone feel safe, like you said, to open up and be vulnerable with you. A judgment-free. I 100% agree with that, because I've been to psychologists and stuff before, and you blurt out your story and you feel like you're just sitting there being judged. And so I love this path. Where are we going to go? I want to know how people can, we can talk about, is there anything else that you would like to focus on here, or the message that you want to get out? You said something about children, and so I really want you to have your little say here before we wrap it up, and people can find out where to find you.
Let me just look through all my notes.
So we've talked about the healing ourselves. So we talked about that before, about as mothers, with the generational trauma and the patterns and beliefs and everything that stops with us. And we have to do the work first to be able to teach that to our children. So if you want to elaborate more on that, why you're so passionate.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, it's one thing to sort of say to our children, oh, you should, be more confident, you should love yourself, etc. But unless they actually see you literally embodying that and being that yourself, they can't do it. Like, because children are tuned to our nervous system, right? So if it's not enough for mum to just say, don't be anxious, blah, blah, blah. If she's feeling anxious, the child is going to literally feel that, because they are tuned to our nervous system. Their nervous system actually develops off ours. It's quite fascinating if you get into the science of it. But that's why, a lot of parents will send their teenagers to a, hypnotherapist or whatever, and they're like, here, see my child, fix my child. Well, the thing is, children can change really, really quickly. But then if you go put them back in that environment, they're going to fall back into rapport with that environment, because children are literally in survival mode of their environment, right? So when we're born, we only have 3 fears. It's the fear of falling, the fear of abandonment, and the fear of loud noises, right? So as a child, we rely on our parents to, keep a roof over our head, to put food on the table. to give us any love. Like, we need love. And so that's why, like, a child, how do I put it? Okay, so just say you have like an abusive parent, a parent that, well, not necessarily physically abusive, but maybe, you know, they put the child down and they're always, you know, criticizing them and stuff. What the child will actually do is they'll turn on themselves. So they'll start actually criticizing themselves and saying, oh, and embodying like, I'm a bad person. It's like, okay, so someone went to throw a punch at you, and if you punched yourself in the face first, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to be like, the hell? It's like a way of protection. Like, they're not going to go and punch you because they're going to be like, oh, you just punched yourself.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, so the child actually turns on themselves and criticizes themselves.
And tells them that same story, right? Like, you repeat the same story throughout your life until you break that pattern.
Yeah. Because as children, we do not question anything. We're literally like a sponge. We just take everything on. We don't develop like the critical factor till we're like 7 or 8. So we literally believe everything to be true. So that's why children, you know, believe in Santa and things like that. So, you know, if the parent is saying like, oh, I don't know, you're not good at sport or whatever, the child's going to literally take that as true.
You're so unorganized and things like that. You have to be very...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Or you're not the smart one, or you're not the...
quite often compared to the siblings, and this is how these things can get literally imprinted and affect us for the rest of our lives. And so that is why it is so important to look at the parent first. Okay, what's actually going on for the parent? Is the parent anxious? Is the parent, you know, got all this trauma that they're unconscious, well, a lot of the time unconsciously passing on?
Yeah, the negative talks are then monkeys.
Exactly.
You know, like, I know that as women, we're very critical of ourselves and we can say things, and I've got daughters, so I have to be very careful with the things you say. And my husband will even catch me out and say, they're going to mimic that. You say bad things about yourself, they then start saying bad things about their self.
100%, that's it. And that is exactly why you have to start with the parent always. Yeah, so, you know, as a parent, we need to take responsibility for that. You know, the power is literally in our hands.
Yes, and we're raising our children until they're, you know, 18 and above. We've got to actually get back to parenting. So I think like there's like such a disconnect right now in, okay, they go off to high school and we don't have to worry about them anymore, or we put them in care for a long time. And, you know, like, we have to remember that we're still parenting, and it does start with us, and then it reflects, and it's a ripple effect.
That's it. And so, you know, by doing the work on ourselves, not only does it help our children, so like, let's just say, for example, if you show your children that you're loving yourself, you value yourself, like, for example, rather than, you know, always putting yourself last, you know, your children see you taking the time for yourself, taking the time to go to the gym, taking the time, of course, spending quality time with them, but showing that you matter, right? That's giving them the gift of when they're 20, they're 30, they don't have to think about it. That's what they do, because that's their subconscious programming. Of course they matter. Of course they're going to put themselves first.
My mum definitely, like, you know, seeing your mum create a healthy meal, like, for themselves and the family, but the mum sitting down and saying, I'm going to eat. No, I'm not going to get up and get you a drink. You can wait. I'm going to actually...
I matter.
Yeah, because I matter too. And then teaching them the same thing. So when they grow up and then they find a partner themselves, they're like, hang on, I matter. It's not about them. It's about me first.
Exactly. And that's not even a lesson that has to be a sit down and tell them. As I said, it's what they see that matters most.
Yeah.
And so that just becomes their subconscious programming and their autopilot. And as I said, that's what most of our days are run off. 90% of our mind is the subconscious mind. We only use our conscious mind a very small part of the day. So everything's kind of just recycled from the past, right? So you want it to be easy for them. You want that to be their autopilot. Of course I do this for myself, not something that's like a struggle and a battle. They wonder, like, why do I have to just keep going and needing to do more? And why can't I sit down and relax? Like, most people actually have no conscious awareness of why they do what they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why am I so overwhelmed? Why do I feel like I must do all the housework today? Why do I feel like I have to do more? Why do I feel like I'm not enough? They got no idea.
Yeah, until they have that snapping point and they make that conscious decision of, I want to change. So I need to take a look at myself. I need that mirror up. So like you said, when you had your first child, it's like a big mirror up in your face of all the underlying root causes of why you are the way you are. So I love how you dig into that work. And what was the other thing that I was going to say?
I just want to share a very powerful quote.
Yes.
So it's by Jung, who was a psychotherapist and delved into a lot of the subconscious work. So the quote is, "Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will drive our lives and we'll call it fate." And that is most of our society today. As we discussed, we are becoming more and more conscious, but most people have no awareness of why they do what they do, why they behave the way that they behave, why they have the thoughts they have. So it's huge. You need to look what's under the surface, what's under the ocean, because there's a whole massive part of the iceberg that you have not looked at. So it's game-changing.
It is absolutely game-changing. Like 99.9% of my mums that I have consultations with, and I ask them, why is it important to you to change and create better habits? And it's because they don't want their children to go through what they went through. They don't want them to struggle the way that they have struggled.
That's amazing.
So it is, it really is. So Jessica, where can my audience find you if they want to know more about you and your work, and maybe even get in touch with you to work with you?
Yeah, cool. So my main place that you would find me is on Instagram at by Jessica K _. But if you type by Jessica K, it'll come straight up. I've got a ton of, valuable content to dive into there. Predominantly, I work with mums, probably I'd say 90% of my clients are mums. And so I work a lot with trauma, and as I said, what trauma is, most people don't realize, everyone's got some kind of trauma. Everybody's got limiting beliefs. You just don't realize what we're stuck.
Huge effect. It's just if it's actually affecting your life, then it is trauma.
Yep, that's it. So, so I work with, releasing all that past baggage, all your limitations, because that's the thing, before all our conditioning, before all our traumas, any negative programming and limiting beliefs, we were born pure, we were born confident, we were born kicking and screaming with a voice. Many of us in our childhood tend to lose our voice, and we're not able to speak up and things like that. So what I want you to know is that underneath all those layers of conditioning and, the negative programming is your essential self, is your pure self, is who you were meant to be. And it's that confident self. It's the self that takes what they want and has a thriving life. And I'm so passionate about people getting back to that. And I continue to do the work on myself, It is, I say this to my mums in my group program, it is a lifestyle, and it is the journey, but it's a journey that's always worth it.
Yep. Because the time will pass anyway, so you may as well, make the time pass productively and grow and have a better life. So you've also got an Instagram community for mums that thrive. Is that right?
Yeah, yep, that's it.
That's cool. Yeah, mums that thrive. So yeah, if anyone wants to, I will have the links in this podcast anyway.
Yeah. Awesome.
To be able to connect with you. But thank you so much for being so open and honest and vulnerable and sharing your story. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really think the audience is going to get a lot out of it too.
Yeah, my pleasure. Lovely.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Mama. You can find all the relevant links, including socials, in the description section of this podcast. If you want to find out more information about how I can help you build your best body after babies, then visit my website, www.thefitmummethod.com, for more info. Lastly, before you leave here today, if you've enjoyed listening, then please subscribe and share so you can help me to reach out to those mamas that also need to listen too.